spirituality and hot yoga. Some people may say, that sounds like an oxymoron. Let me tell you how we directly connect all the way back to Paramahansa Yogananda, arguably one of the most famous spiritual gurus that came to the West. You're going to want to stay tuned for this one. Hot yoga. Do we just turn up the heat and do yoga? That's what we're going to talk about in this episode. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Jimmy Barkan. Please consider subscribing, hit that notification bell, share it with your friends, smash the like button. Hot yoga. Do we just turn up the heat? See, I consider hot yoga to be a specific style of hatha yoga that comes from the state of Bengal in India, specifically the city of Calcutta, and the founder was Vishnu Ghosh. Now, before we get into the spiritual connection Vishnu Ghosh had with Yogananda, let's talk about how hot yoga got its nickname. Because one of Vishnu Ghosh's top students, one of his number one disciples, was Bikram Yoga. And he was teaching yoga in Calcutta and then in Bombay, or now they call it Mumbai. Then he moved to Japan because Vishnu Ghosh had this affinity with the Japanese people. And in Japan, it was freezing cold. So Bikram was trying to simulate the conditions of Calcutta because they just opened the window and it's 100 degrees outside with 100% humidity. So let's talk about the humidity real quick. The humidity sets the heat index. So here in Florida, which is like Calcutta, maybe not quite as humid, but pretty close, we don't want the temperature to be higher than 100 degrees because the humidity level is going to get way up there. But if we were in Las Vegas or Boulder, Colorado, where it's a lot drier, you can spike the temperature to 105, 110 even if the humidity level is lower. So it really depends on the humidity level, not the temperature that's going to set the heat index. So now Bikram goes to Japan. It's freezing cold, so he started turning on these heat lamps or space heaters, and all he wanted to do was simulate the conditions of Calcutta. So why do we even use the heat? Bikram had a great metaphor. He said, if you take a piece of steel to a blacksmith and you tell him you want to make you want a sword or a knife from that piece of steel, the first thing he's going to do is heat it up. He's going to put it in the fire, and then he can bang on that piece of steel and mold it any way he wants. If you start banging on that cold piece of steel, you're going to break your hammer. So especially in the West, where we have larger bone structures, larger skeletal structures, you need to get that body nice and hot and open before you can start to stretch it, before it's can become pliable and have that mobility or range of motion. Let's go back to Vishnu Ghosh. When he was young, he was taken ill. And there's this wonderful book that was written by Yogananda's older brother called Megda, Megda. And Megda just simply means second oldest, because Yogananda was the second oldest. And he talked about his younger brother, Paramahansa Yogananda. And in the book, he talks about his youngest brother, Vishnu Ghosh, becoming ill. Yogananda then prescribed to Vishnu Ghosh a sequence of yogic asana to help heal his body. He had such a miraculous healing that he then dedicated his life to using the yogic posture or asana to heal the body as a healing modality. But not only was Paramahansa Yogananda Vishnu Ghosh's older brother and taught him yogic asana, he was his guru. He was his spiritual guru. So the roots of this particular yoga comes from Yogananda, comes from that lineage over in Calcutta, actually in Bengal, because his guru, Yukteswar, comes from another city called Serampore, and his guru, Lahiri Mahashaya, was in Benares, all within Bengal. The whole concept of the yoga that Paramahansa Yogananda brought to the West was all about meditation and a particular style of yoga he calls Kriya Yoga. And the Kriya Yoga is the quickening to the immersion with man and God. Or in yoga, in Sanskrit words, it's Atman and the Brahman coming together. So Vishnu Ghosh's foundation, the roots of his yoga, comes from the spiritual background. So much so, when Bikram came to the United States, and Bikram was, again, one of Vishnu Ghosh's top students, he created a beginning yogic asana class, 26 postures, 2 breathing exercise, but he also has a 91 posture advanced class. And what's interesting about this particular advanced class is there's a section in that class called meditation seats, because the word asana actually means seat. It doesn't mean posture. It's nicknamed by posture, symbolized by posture, but it actually means seat. So the yogi takes his meditation seat. And Goraksha, who is the founder of Hatha Yoga, said the 4 most important postures in all of Hatha Yoga were these particular asana seats. That's definitely a video I want to do in the future, showing you what these 4 postures were. And there's this wonderful movie about Yogananda called Awake, The Life of Yogananda. Look it up. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon. Toward the end of the movie, Yogananda goes back to India. His guru calls him in 1935, 1936. And there's a scene in that movie where they're walking down the streets of Bengal and they're welcoming, actually streets of Calcutta, and they're welcoming Yogananda back home. And right next to Yogananda, they don't mention it in the movie, is Vishnu Ghosh, sort of playing some kind of tambourine, and they're just chanting the guru's name and welcoming him back home. This is his roots. This is where he came from. The spirituality of Yogananda and all his gurus filters into Vishnu Ghosh, and the style of this Hatha Yoga to heal the body all came from this spiritual connection, this spiritual root system. But now back to ancient history. Mahavatar Babaji, he was the first yogi to bring Kriya Yoga out of the Dark Ages back in the 1700s. And he then initiated his number 1 disciple, Lahiri Mahashaya, who then initiated his number 1 disciple, Swami Sri Yukteswar, who then initiated his number 1 disciple, Paramahansa Yogananda. Yogananda's younger brother and disciple was Vishnu Ghosh. He's the founder of what I now consider to be Hot Yoga. Some people are now calling it Ghosh Yoga. One of Vishnu Ghosh's number 1 students was Bikram Yoga, who brings this style of asana to the West. And then I had the privilege of being Bikram's most senior teacher. So you can see how, from the Barkan method all the way through past to Babaji, we have this spiritual root connecting us and weaving through the practice and through the modalities. And that's how Hot Yoga directly connects spiritually. So if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, smash that like button, hit the bell, then you get notified every time I post a new video, and I will see you the next video.